Welcome back to the 2016 Affordable Housing Summit. Up to bat next is Joanne Stevens. For those of you who don't know Joanne Stevens, she's a very, very well-respected broker in the mobile home park industry. She's on the board of the Iowa Manufactured Housing Association. You will not find anyone on this planet who has a single bad thing to say about her. Nothing but praise. She's one of the brokers that has made the industry what it is today, which is a far cry from what it was decades ago. She takes calls, returns calls, gives people the straight truth, and that's why we were delighted to have her on the summit to talk about her views on the deals going forward, the brokerage community, those type of items. So, Joanne, are you here?
Yes. Good afternoon, Frank. Thank you.
Great. Joanne, you're breaking up pretty badly. Brandon, are you on here as well? Joanne, try it. Oh, okay. Now we can hear you good. Yeah, now I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Very good.
So thank you for having me on the call, and it's always a pleasure to talk to you and to participate in any of the Frank and Dave events. And I've learned a ton already from this summit. So thanks for putting it on.
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're delighted to have you, Joanne, and let's just jump right into it here. You've seen a lot of deals happen in 2015. Were there any that were particularly memorable as far as that they were particularly good? And what are the lessons learned from those deals that went well?
You know, Frank, I think that's a really great question, and a couple of deals come immediately to mind. And one was a property in Kansas City called Manchester Village. And the people who bought the property, they probably are going to do very, very well with this property in terms of cash flow, and then when they ultimately sell it. I wouldn't be surprised if they, make $2 million or more in say the next 5 years if they decide to sell. But the reason that was a good deal is because it was a property that was older, had small sites, had some trees that need trimming, and just didn't look very nice. But these buyers were able to see past that, and they got a very good price. The seller was very serious about selling, wanted to sell it, and so they're going to do very well. The other property was in a Midwestern city, Urbana, Illinois, and the buyer for that property, I didn't actually have the listing. I knew about the property, and the owner called me and they said, well, we have an offer on the table from somebody, and we'll pay you, your normal commission. Do you have anybody? And so they told me the price that they had on the table. I called one buyer, and the buyer knew the price, and he stepped up and he paid quite a lot more than the offer that was on the table. In other words, he didn't just try to buy it for $1,000 more. He paid a good price. But the thing that was good about that property was it was a stable property that didn't really need anything. It was a small park, but it was all city utilities that were billed direct to the residents, no park-owned homes, only 2 or 3 vacant sites. So just the stable property that everybody wants, but are little not easy to find and getting harder to find. And that buyer was that was you, Frank, and Dave.
That's right, Joanne. Yes, it was.
So the lesson learned on that one is don't try to buy things on the cheap.
Well, and I think, Joanne, in the case of the one that we bought, it's a, there are many deals out there that if you just look at the cap page, you're making a mistake because, if you take a property that's got the lot rent too low, a property that's got a whole bunch of vacant park-owned homes that could easily be filled, and you make your summation based on exactly what's going on at this one moment, you're typically getting a false impression on a lot of deals. So it's always important to get the actual book. Don't just read the cover of the book, but get the book and read through the book.
Yeah,
And get
true.
you a whole better idea of what's really going on. And going back to what Joanne said on the first deal there, that's one of our favorite deals, is the deal that's cosmetically ugly, because it turns away people who don't know any better. And it often, the seller himself gets sold on the ignorance of the other buyers, because so many people look at it, say, oh, it's hopeless and it's worthless, that they start thinking that, when in fact it's just a cosmetic cleanup issue.
Right.
So that's definitely one of our favorite deals as well.
Mm-hmm. And I think too, Frank, another lesson learned on deal making in 2015 was the number of investors, whether it was a single investor, just somebody buying for their own portfolio, or a portfolio acquisition guy, just saying, gosh, I wish I would have bought such and such a property when I had the chance. In other words, in 2010 through 2014, the prices, they looked like it was just a little too much money, and they just passed on it, didn't buy it, and now look back and are like, oh. So the deals, sometimes there's an old saying in real estate investing that sometimes the best deal you make are the ones that you don't buy, which that certainly can be the case. But I'm seeing more regret for not buying deals than what I've seen in the past.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also hear that same general feeling out there. John, let me ask you, on that note, where do you see things right now? Like where I mean, you've got up here on the screen 5 deals, it appears, that you've sold recently. I mean, where are cap rates right now? Where do you see things heading going into 2016?
Mm-hmm. Well, the cap rates, I think they're still all over the place, somewhere between a 7 and a 12, which is what they've sort of have been for years. But I would say that people are getting more sensitive to what the cap rate should be for a property based on the location. In other words, I'm hearing more investors wanting to buy, they're willing to pay a lower cap rate if it's more of a metro area, or we know that ELS, for example, will pay low cap rates if it's a resort type property or near a resort. But I would say, and probably a lot of it has to do with the boot camp. You and Dave have talked a lot about, checking out your market rents, not just the mobile home parks, but the apartments and site-built housing and the employment outlook. And so I think people, the general economic outlook is affecting the cap rates more than in the past. People are getting a little smarter about that, or sophisticated, I would say.
And do you see do you see cap rates declining significantly in 2016, or do you think they'll stay about the same, or what do you think?
I think they'll stay the same or a little bit lower. I know there's a lot of talk about interest rates going up, but my experience, and I've had a long career in real estate, but it just seems in the past that when the stock market is suffering or having, sputtering like it is now, that helps real estate. All of a sudden, real estate looks better than the stock market. It looks safer, more predictable, and more controllable than the stock market. So I think that will help keep cap rates stable or even lower them a little bit. And it seems that people aren't too, presently it doesn't seem to be that interest rates are going up enough to affect the cap rates. And I think also the dearth of available properties that are good properties to buy, where you can make the cap rate a little bit higher by doing some things. I think those are getting harder to find. So I think that's affecting cap rates a little bit too.
Sure. Let me ask you this, Joanne. I mean, in many of the states that you work, Private utilities are fairly common, particularly septic, sometimes well. You know, how can a buyer looking at a property that's got private utilities, how can they best protect themselves, or what are some things you've seen as far as ways people are approaching private utilities?
Well, I actually am working on one of my own properties with private utilities, and thankfully, Frank, the city is buying the property next door to my park to make into a business park, and so I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to hook up to the property. But I do have a great idea that I got from a buyer for a property that sold about a year ago. There was an investor from Southern California who bought a park in Iowa, and I think he sort of got intrigued with mobile home parks, bought this park, and then for one reason or another decided mobile home parks weren't his bailiwick. And so he had rural water, which is sort of the same as city water. In other words, the county provides the water. And so you're not in a water sampling, water testing business. But there was a lagoon, which that is not a good situation, and the property didn't even have an operating permit for the lagoon. So the fellow who bought it thought, I think I can get that city to hook up, even though the city was a mile away, the nearest city. He spent $125,000 to hook up to the city, and which isn't all that much money in the scope of things. So I thought that was a very creative solution for getting around that lagoon system.
Yeah, Joanne, that's actually that's a bargain to go a mile for $125,000. They must have really cut him a deal, or maybe they wanted to bring the sewer down for other users or something, because that's really cheap.
Yeah, no, he really got bids, and yeah, he got a very good deal. So, and good for him. So I think that's when I hear about things like that, I like to pass them on to other people, because if we have private utilities, we ought to be planning on how we're going to get city utilities. And also with private utilities, it's kind of like getting zoning, and I'm laughing because I have done my share of zonings, and they are not very much fun.
Right.
And so when you're, my experience has been in zoning a property that you talk to the city, you talk to the P&Z commissioners, you talk to the city council, and it's very, it's not politically correct for a council member to be against mobile home parks, but when it comes right down to the vote, they're going to vote against the mobile home park or not show up the night of the vote, that they're sick, or you're not going to win that vote. And so one of my initiatives has been to talk to local employers who I know are having a hard time hiring people because there isn't enough low-cost housing. If they're in the hospitality business, or the retailers, or some of the factories that don't pay very much, they're the ones that they're thinking, we need to hire people, but where are they going to live? And having an employee who's making $12 an hour and driving 1 hour each way to work is not a stable employee in the eyes of most employers.
Sure. Well, what do you see as far as park-owned homes right now? I mean, obviously, many parks out there, they always come with at least one, sometimes 10, sometimes 50. Did you see any tricks last year in park-owned homes, or new ways people are approaching park-owned homes?
I would say that a couple of things on that, Frank. More of the mom and pop owners, it's almost like, Rip Van Winkle waking up and think, by gosh, we got to be buying some of these homes before they move out. I mean, it's kind of been a long time coming where they realize that the homes are going out. And, people ask me all the time, where can they get a source of good used homes to buy and move into their parks, and that that just doesn't exist. I'm not hearing much about people saying, and my competitor, the other mobile home park in my vicinity, area poached, bought a home in my park and moved it out because, and that probably has a lot to do with, people realizing that if you buy a home in somebody's park and move it into your park, you better be very careful whose park you're taking it out of, or it's going to be open season. You could very well be having homes move out of your park.
Right.
And I know
exactly.
that's something you've emphasized a lot too, that just don't do that. It's going to come.
Well, yeah, that's the one thing that park owners do that ruins it for everybody is when park owners start, we call it poaching homes out of neighboring parks. And the reason it's a stupid idea, which most people, who don't believe it's stupid, they try it and then realize it was stupid. Most park owners, if you steal a home out of theirs, they'll come back and steal one out of yours. So at the end of the day, if you steal 3 from the guy next door and he steals 3 back, you've not increased your occupancy 1 iota. But what you have done is you're out significant cost of moving those homes and discounting your lot rent for some kind of special move-in period. So basically, it's just a dumb theory. The only time we ever see that working is when you have a park that's shutting down for development, or you have a park that the guy has let it go so bad that the people just despise it, and the word is out, no one else will move in. But
right.
Yeah, we absolutely hate seeing people poaching. We wish that more people were aware of that. That's such a bad idea. Joanne, I mean, obviously from the postcards here, you're Iowa, Minnesota. I mean, what parts of America do you think are best to buy parks in for 2016, and why?
Well, I think one of the states that could be very good is probably Michigan, and I say that because in the United States, it seems that we go through these down cycles in our economy, like we're recovering from the Great Recession that began in 2008, and we're recovering nicely, even though there's all kinds of things in the financial papers about, well, it's not that great of a recovery. We still have a lot of problems, or some problems with the recovery. But we tend to, as a country, when the economy goes down, you hear a lot of people saying, "Oh, it'll never come back. It'll never be the same." And then 3, 4, 5 years later, it comes roaring back, and it's better than it's ever been. And I would say probably Michigan is going to be one of those states where, for years the conventional wisdom has been, well, don't buy in Michigan. And a lot of investors, or a lot of Michigan people will say, well, there's really 2 Michigans. There's Eastern Michigan that has been very troubled by the auto industry with the job picture, and then there's Central to Western Michigan, which wasn't really affected very much by that at all. But one thing Michigan has that a lot of states don't have is they have a lot of water, and I think that's going to be something that we're all going to be thinking about a lot more of how we're going to deal with water, whether it's clean water shortages.
Yeah, I agree, Joanne. I think that Michigan got a terrible rap for a long time that was unfair, because you had Detroit, which was clearly in bad shape, but you had other cities like Ann Arbor and the whole western side that had no economic issues at all, right?
Right.
So it would be like throwing an entire car brand out because of one bad model. So it'd be like they bring out a really bad Ford pickup truck, and then people just stop buying Ford altogether, right? So it was, very, very, very unfair. And anyone here on the summit, if you'll take out your computer and if you'll Wikipedia up Detroit, which was the epicenter of the Michigan blight, you will now see that it itself has come back now as a technology and other industry sector. And so, I mean, there's no question that Michigan is hugely underrated. You know, we have now bought some parks in Michigan, and I agree with you. I think it's a very good area that most people do not think about. The prices are still very appealing, and there's a lot of product out there. So I agree with that completely.
I think one more thing about Michigan is there's that big bank from New York that they are investing heavily in Michigan or in Detroit, and I don't know what they're investing in, but I think they're making a big bet. I just learned the other day that another large community owner who is also very big into the home sales bought 4 parks in the Detroit area that with a lot of vacancy. So I think that we're starting to see people feeling, starting to bet on Michigan again.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Joanne, with the areas you work and the parks that you broker, are you seeing any industry consolidation issues at this point? Any things that make certain types of parks harder to buy now because you've got greater competition from larger groups, or what are you seeing out there?
Well, what I'm seeing is, yes, there is definitely more consolidation. I mean, you're very much involved in that yourself, Frank. And so, yeah, it is making it harder to buy the parks, and which is a good thing if you own parks, because we're not building any new parks, or very few. I think what we'll probably see in 2016 and probably over the next 4 to 5 years as the supply of housing tightens up and the need for affordable housing becomes stronger, is we'll see some of what you call the broken developments be developed. Properties that maybe started to be built in the early 2000s, and then, just as the housing market was, the site-built housing was taking off, it put the damper on, maybe these new communities that had nice clubhouses and were for the empty nesters, but then by the time they started to really get traction, the housing market crashed, and then nobody wanted to sell their house after 2008 because they couldn't sell it for what they could sell it for in 2005. So I think we'll see some of a little more of that, but the consolidation, I think, will be very good in a way for investors, because when these consolidations happen, there are 2 things happen. Number one, you have a new breed of investors, and they might be very hot on buying mobile home parks in 2016, but by 2018 or 2020, they might be on to the next, what they view as the next hot real estate investment. So they might very well decide that we're out of the mobile home park business. They may not, but they're not going to hold on to properties for 30, 40, and 50 years like we're seeing with the mom and pop owners. So I think that'll be very good for investors. There would just be more properties available. And number 2, I think they're also increasing the awareness of mobile home parks. When somebody, like a Sun Communities, when they buy a lot of properties, that gets noticed, and it helps the mobile home park business gain even more respect. And number 3, and I think one of the other speakers alluded to this also, there's always some properties that they don't really fit their strategy because of the location, the size, or it needs too much work, too much vacancy, too many park-owned homes, too much something, and then they're going to be calling the broker to put that property on the market.
Sure. Let me ask you this, Joanne. How is the best, most effective way to work with Joanne Stevens or any broker? In other words, if someone wants to buy a park and they know how much they have for a down and they know geographically where they want to be, how's the best way they can transfer that onto you so you can remember that, so that you might call them when you come upon a listing that would work for them? What's the best way to present yourself to the brokers?
Well, most brokers, I would say, including myself, we keep track of the people who call us to say that they have a number of dollars available. This is what they're interested in buying. It's especially helpful to me if they tell me what they don't want to buy. They don't want to buy in certain areas. They don't want to buy private utilities, or it has to be so much, only a certain, level of vacancy or occupancy. And so just letting the broker know, calling the broker, sending them an email, probably once a month to just let the broker know you're still in the game. I would say that what a lot of times what is code to a broker, at least to me, is when I say, well, how much cash are we working with? Because, you need to know how much they can, what they can finance, and they don't want to tell you. Or they say it's no problem. Whenever they say it's no problem, they can raise about any amount of money, that's a problem. So so just, if you don't have the money, just say you're working on raising the money, and just keep in touch with me and let me know how that's going, because the broker wants to work with the people who can deliver and you want to put a deal together that people are going to be satisfied with, and you don't want to waste people's time. And so just being honest and keeping in touch with the broker. If I was an investor and I wanted the brokers to work with me, I would talk to lenders, make sure I was as pre-qualified as I could be, and that the broker knew that I had talked to the bank. I would also talk to appraisers who specialize in this, in the mobile home park appraising, because a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, but sometimes in mobile home park investors will push back when I tell them this is what you can buy, and they think they ought to be able to buy more, larger part for for the amount of money that they have. And so, just finding out for talking to some of the appraisers and find out for yourself what things are going, what's going on, or what things are selling for.
Joanne, let me ask you this. How far off, in your experience, will most sellers go off their asking price, based on 100%? In other words, if someone is asking $1 million, typically, how low will they go, would you say?
I would say not very low. Hardly in this market, Frank. Hardly at all. I mean, it depends on if they're realistically priced to begin with, but I think most brokers aren't going to take a listing that's very much off the market price, because it does set an unrealistic expectation with the seller. Then they're going to be mad if you don't get the price, and it's very, in my view, it's very confusing to the market when a broker overprices a listing, because it tells the other sellers, well, gosh, if that piece of junk is worth that amount of money, then mine is worth a lot more because it's my part. And so I think the days of overpricing listings, I think those are over with. So I would say they sell for, they hardly ever sell for below list price, and oftentimes they sell for above list price.
Joanne, when you have someone who when the seller is way overly zealous on what they think their property is worth, as a potential buyer, what is the best way to try to educate them on the real value? Let's say the guy is asking on some park in a medium-sized town of Iowa, he wants a 6 cap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the market is a 9 cap. How is the best way to educate them? Do you just give up, or what can a buyer do to that seller that he would take in a realistic manner to try and get that change? What's the best way to approach that?
Yeah, I think the best way to approach that is, I think you have to be prepared. You have to commit to this is going to could be a very long-term situation where you're going to have to stay in touch with that seller and be very nice to them, send them little gifts, send them, give them a friendly call once in a while and hope that something changes about their situation, because the problem with the situation you're describing, Frank, is that usually those people don't need to sell, and sometimes that the reason they think their property is worth a 6 cap is because they got some erroneous information from somebody who didn't know what they were talking about. And so you just have to really stay very close to that person, probably for a few years, if you hope to get that deal.
Sure. All right, well, Joanne, we're out of time, but again, we really appreciate you being here. Again, if you have any questions for Joanne, you can see there on your screen her email address. And Joanne, you want to give them your phone number as well?
Yeah, my phone number is 319-378-6786, and I want to thank you, Frank, for inviting me to be on the program. It was a lot of fun as always, and I just appreciate how you and Dave have really opened up the business for so many of us, for the brokers, for the community owners, shared information, shared your mistakes, the things you've learned. And if I may, I do a newsletter. It's on my website, joannemstevens.com, and you should check out who the Men of the Year are for 2016, Frank.
Oh, wow. Okay, Joanne, I'll do that then. All right, very good. Well, as I say, we really appreciate you being here, because again, we love information, and you not only have great information, but you always present it in a very informative and nice manner. And again, we hear nothing but good things about you from many folks who go to boot camp. And you're a broker they can call, and you always answer and talk to them and return their call, which is awesome, because there's so many brokers out there for some reason that do not do that. So we really appreciate that. And again, Joanne, thanks for being here, and I'm sure we'll talk to you again on next year's summit. But again, if anyone has any questions of Joanne, feel free to call her, email her. She always responds. And again, thanks for being here.